8:29 and you are tuned to RMC and BFMTV. Hello, Eric
Hello.
Zemmour. You are the president of the Reconquête Party, a former presidential candidate, and you are publishing La Messe n'est pas dite for a Judeo-Christian revival in France. It's with fire. We will come back to it in a moment. You call on the French Christians to a revival, to almost assume their faith more as an identity or as part of the French identity. But first, a question about the Louvre, and actually it's perhaps not very far off, since you say in your book, the church made the kings who made the nation, which made the republic. France without Christianity is not France, and I want to continue living in France. The jewelry, the Louvre, for you, all that is connected. Do you congratulate yourself like the Minister of the Interior? He extended his warmest congratulations to the investigators who worked tirelessly. Are you pleased with the arrest of 2 of the 4 vandals?
Obviously, I am pleased about it. Really, I thank and congratulate the investigators, which proves that when the police can work in good conditions, they work effectively. Now, we need to look beyond the discussion we've already had. I will not revisit the discussion on responsibilities, the resignation I had requested from the director or president, whatever. And the minister of the Louvre. Now, we are at those who are arrested, the thieves. And you saw that there was one who was Algerian and was fleeing to Algeria, who was arrested.
I don't know if he was Algerian. He might have been entirely of French nationality. In any case, he was trying to flee to Algeria. The destination was Algeria, and the destination was Mali.
You are right to point out, by the way, because he might have been of French nationality. But you know that in the Maghreb countries, they all have dual nationality because the law prohibits losing one's nationality even when one has parents and grandparents. So you're right, he might have been French and Algerian or French and Malian.
At this stage, we have several pieces of information. We know that they are both known to the police, that they are in their 30s and that they are from Saint-Saint-Denis.
You know, I have been a lot.
When you say voilà, what does that mean? Because I want to clarify for those listening to us on the radio that you said voilà while shrugging your shoulders.
Because it's not surprising.
As if it were fine. Well, there you go. It's obvious.
That's what you're saying? Yes, absolutely. I think so. And I'll tell you why. If you want, I was mocked a lot during the presidential campaign. And even at this microphone, I remember your shocked reactions when I talked about everyday jihad. You remember? What did I mean by that? I meant that an isolated incident is just an isolated incident. 1,000 isolated incidents are no longer isolated incidents. They need to be analyzed globally. And my analysis, others may have different ones, but my analysis is that all this is a continuum of violence, as feminists say, with thefts, rapes, and looting. There, I call that looting. I don't call that rape. With, obviously, the murders, with all the drug trafficking, all of this being done mostly by the same population, I think we need to analyze all of this in light of who they are. That is to say, for me, it's a historical revenge, an everyday jihad, a war that these people wage against us, that these people wage against our civilization, against France, out of hatred for the infidels, as they say. And it brings us back to my book, and also out of revenge. Of colonization. They are convinced, they were taught in school in Algeria, that colonial France had plundered Algeria. So in the minds of many young people of Algerian origin, delinquency is not delinquency. It's revenge, and it's a recovery, if I may say so.
But Eric Zemmour, you know nothing about the agents, the sponsors. We don't know if these 2 men who were arrested, who were indeed heading to Algeria and Mali, were not working on behalf of a collector passionate about the history of France. We don't know at this stage.
We will see. You don't have many doubts. They were going to Algeria. I don't have many doubts because I think my analysis is regularly confirmed. You saw again this weekend the trial of the young Algerian woman who murdered poor Lola.
All that, there is the same, for you, all that, you create a link, a thread. I tell you, I will gladly use the expression of feminists who talk about a continuum of violence, you know. Well, I say the same thing.
It's a continuum of violence. And then there are thefts, there are rapes, there are crimes, there are lootings.
That's what an occupying army does. What does an occupying army do?
She steals, she rapes.
France is occupied.
I think there is today a mentality of an occupying militia, people who stab, who steal, who rape. That's exactly what an army does when it occupies a country.
There are several things in what you just said, Eric Zemmour, and I noted the word civilization jihad. It almost invites the word opposite to crusade. It's almost a bit like that call you have in your book. We'll get to that in a moment, but I would also like to ask you about the budget issue since today we really get into the thick of it with both the analysis of France's overall budget and the social security budget. Zuckman tax on very high wealth, yes or no?
No, even the light Zuckman tax, as the Socialist Party calls it, meaning a tax on more than 10 million euros.
I'll tell you. Our philosophy at Reconquête, and we are the only ones who think so, I will see later, is that we are the most taxed country in the world, so we need to lower taxes, all taxes. I do not think there are people who are not taxed enough and others who are too taxed. I think everyone is too taxed. There you go. In France, we are a fiscal hell, and therefore all taxes must be massively lowered. And for that, obviously, expenses must be massively reduced. That's the overall philosophy. I would also like to make a remark, if you allow me, to say that this budget debate is exceptional in the sense that usually...
In any case, it is taking place under exceptional conditions.
That's what I mean. Usually, you know how it goes under the Fifth Republic. Bassi plans the budget, and then the majority votes under pressure because the government, if necessary, uses Article 49.3 against them.
Here, we're basically in the opposite.
So... there is an obvious disadvantage, which is that it's a tax fare, precisely. We will talk about it. But there is an interest that I see, which is that since the budget is the expression of political, even ideological choices, not just numbers, each party can assert itself, and the citizen can see the political, economic, and budgetary philosophy of each party. And I am very struck, for example, to see, obviously, the almost permanent connections between the National Rally and LFI.
You are talking about a connection between the RN and LFI.
Well, listen, excuse me. When you vote together, it's called an affinity. I'm not saying they are allies, I'm saying they vote the same way.
What are you referring to? There was perhaps the question of the amendment on the universal tax.
Exactly. What is the universal tax? It's to be able to catch, in quotes, the French who are, according to the discourse of the National Rally and France Insoumise, in tax havens. But it's not true. They are not in tax havens. They are in Portugal or Italy. These are not tax havens. It's France that is taxing them.
But Eric Zemmour, on this, I'm very surprised. You're against the universal tax.
Oh, yes. In the current context, I repeat to you.
But you often admire American style patriotism. Obviously, you see where I'm going, but it's true that it is the reference country on this issue of a universal tax, meaning that wherever you live in the world, if you are American, if you have American nationality, you are bound by tax to that country. Isn't it the greatest bond, one of the greatest bonds also between a citizen and their country to pay taxes no matter where you are? Why are you against it?
Let me respond. Do you know how much the mandatory levies are in the United States? Much lower. 33% of GDP. By the way, this will interest and amuse you. That was the figure under General de Gaulle in France. At the time the Rolling Stones came, it was Pompidou. They came to avoid the English tax burden. They came to France. You see, times have really changed. Today we are at 46% in France. We have one of the world records along with the Scandinavian countries. So today, yes, I am in favor of a general reduction. But in addition, the story of universal tax can go very far. You know, Jean-Philippe Tanguy, who is in charge of budget discussions for the National Rally, said a phrase that I find very evocative and that reminded me of many things. He said to justify his vote, he said fleeing France is immoral. It reminded me, you know, of The Gods Are Athirst, that sublime book by Anatole France about the terror. It's a phrase Robespierre could have said. If it's immoral, they should be guillotined if they flee France.
But you don't consider that leaving France would be immoral?
I am for staying in France. I always defend that. But I believe we must give the French the opportunity to work.
I am still always surprised, Eric Zemmour, that you reserve most of your arrows for those with whom ideologically you would actually be the closest, the National Rally.
But, dear madam, I will answer you twice. On the budget, I am not close to the National Rally. The National Rally is socialist in economics, and they embrace it in this budget. Last year, they invented 11 taxes. There, they invented 8. They made extraordinary progress. So no, We are not close in terms of economy. We are close when it comes to stopping immigration, yes. And even there, I consider that Islam is not compatible with the Republic, Ms. Le Pen. Yes, I believe there is a great replacement, Ms. Le Pen says no. I am for the remigration of delinquents. Long-term unemployed, Ms. Le Pen says it is not Republican. You see that we are very different. And it is quite normal for me to mention what they do because we have, and I saw it during the presidential election, many voters in common. So we need to enlighten these voters, let them make the choice. Of course, I am not telling them not to. They will have the opportunity to make the choice. In the presidential election, you will not have a common candidate. Obviously, but not at all. But why would we have a common candidate? You know, Mr. Tanguy says that to be allied with the National Rally, one must step back and align. I do not step back and I do not align.
Do you talk with others? Do you talk with Bruno Retailleau, for example? With Laurent Wauquiez?
I have known Bruno Retailleau and Laurent Wauquiez for a long time, and I talk with them whenever they want. But even with Ms. Le Pen, I can talk.
You say when they want. Do they want? Precisely.
You know, you're subtly bringing up the famous union of the right. It's very simple. Ms. Le Pen doesn't want it. She said it. She is not right-wing. She doesn't want it. Very well. Mr. Retailleau doesn't want it either. He said it. She doesn't want an alliance with Reconquête or with the National Rally. So things are clear. If right-wing voters, in general, wherever they vote, want a union of the right, they need to vote for Reconquête because we are the only ones who can make it happen if we are in a position to do so, meaning if we are leading, obviously.
You were just talking about the issue of immigration. You may have heard the statements of Laurent Nunez, the Minister of the Interior. He says we need to resume dialogue with the Algerians. On this, he is rather opposite to the position of his predecessor, Bruno Retailleau, on security and information exchange issues. We are talking about counterterrorism. We are talking about drug trafficking. I will ensure that at some point we resume communication at a technical level, at a security level, which seems important to me. And when asked about the 1968 agreements, he says, as of now, there is this agreement and it works, even if it is not completely perfect. Is this realpolitik?
Listen, I think that at least with Mr. Retailleau, we had words that were suited to the situation. We didn't have action since the visas given to Algerian students have increased. There are still 500,000 immigrants per year. It's a catastrophe in reality. But in words, at least, I will tell you what is happening today. The Algerian government is waging a war against us through immigration. I will tell you what they are doing, the Algerian leaders. They charter buses to put young people in them and place them on boats to go to the coasts of Spain. And from Spain, they go to France. I call that an invasion and moreover, organized by the Algerian state. That's what's happening today. So when I'm told we need to resume dialogue, I laugh. We don't resume dialogue with people who organize the invasion of our country. We fight them.
I read your book, Eric Zemmour, The Mass is Not Said. And I almost felt that deep down you admired Islam, meaning that you admire in Muslims in France a kind of resurgence of identity, acceptance, even that they proudly and loudly uphold their religion. And there is, underlying your book, a criticism of the Christians of France for having, in a way, themselves renounced or at least carried a form of collapse of their identity, their faith. They no longer wear it proudly. Do you make this criticism today of Christians?
So I don't particularly admire Islam because I think it's a totalitarian religion that denies the individual and denies freedom. And I love the individual and freedom.
But you acknowledge them?
But I acknowledge, I was going to tell you exactly. I acknowledge that they hold their identity and who they are high and they are right. They are right in their own place. Here, no, they are wrong. I think, you know the famous phrase of Clermont-Tonnerre at the National Assembly in 1791. He speaks about the Jews, obviously, and he says, we must give everything to the Jews as individuals, nothing as a nation. And he adds, this phrase is never quoted, if they tell me they do not want to be citizens, then let them be banished. Let them be banished, that means remigration.
So either they agree to comply with the rules of the nation, or they leave the territory.
Exactly. Either they go back home. There are 50 Muslim countries. I understand very well that one might want to live as a Muslim, but in that case, there are 50 Muslim countries. Now, I return to your question, which was very interesting about Christianity, and that, you're right, it is the heart of the book. I do think that Christianity is both a faith and an identity. A faith, it is even the only religion that places its dogma on faith. The others, the paganisms.
There's the question of the people, the question of the laws, the question of the rights. In this case, a Christian, even if he does not go to mass, even if he does not practice, if he has faith, indeed, one cannot take that away from him.
You summarize it very well. It's not even that we can't take it away from him. It's that it rests on that. St. Paul says, no matter the actions, no matter the virtues, what matters is that you have faith in Jesus Christ. That is a revolution. And it's a revolution that supports the free individual. No, but what I'm telling you is important because as a result, the individual has an internalized relationship with God.
Yes, but Eric Zemmour, you project onto Christians while you are perfectly aware that it is indeed based on faith, almost, I would say, a vision of Jews as if it were a people, as if they had to be, as if they were responsible for the French identity.
No.
And I still have a real question about the paradox of your book, Eric Zemmour, which is that you say basically that you expect from Christians what you refuse to Muslims. That is, you expect Christians today to claim, to express their faith, to show their belonging to this religion. And that is exactly what you forbid Muslims from doing today in France.
But it's normal. Because
And why?
France was...
Why could some do what others are not allowed to do?
I will tell you, says, France was made by Christianity. Yes, you mentioned. It was not made by Islam.
But is history, wouldn't I say the same thing in Morocco? Is history, Eric Zemmour, not about evolutions, not about mingling, not about... Oh no, it must be frozen at some point. When do you freeze it? When do you freeze it?
Me, you know, I am like General de Gaulle. General de Gaulle said, the history of my country begins with the conversion of Clovis to Catholicism. There you have it. That's how it is. So that's how it is. So France is a Christian country. General de Gaulle always said, the Republic is secular. France is Christian. So apart from, that's why I'm writing this book. From the moment it becomes Islamized, it is no longer France. And you will see, it will have monstrous changes in the years. Monstrous changes, it's simply that your daughter will no longer be able to go out without a veil in 20 years. Already today, young women on the RER can no longer wear miniskirts. Why? Because there is obviously a...
For you, it has a connection with religion.
But of course, in the Muslim religion, women must cover themselves. Otherwise, they are considered prostitutes. And so, obviously, they are attacked as such. You will never see a veiled woman being attacked and raped in the subway, you see.
You are indeed calling, as I was saying, for a kind of awakening among the Catholics of France. However, and you yourself, by the way, acknowledge it, you say Pope Francis himself, who is still the head of the Christian church, unlike his predecessors John Paul II or Benedict XVI, had made disdain for Europe, the decline of Europe, and complacency towards Muslim immigration his trademark. Basically, he believes that the church will survive for centuries and centuries, but that its people of tomorrow will be African or Asian. That means that Christians are there, but not necessarily in Europe. How do you experience that?
But it's very simple. Christianity has had an ambivalence since the beginning. It is both a religion, that is to say, which is based on, religion means to connect to the living and connect to the dead. So it means that the earth and the dead, as Barré said, you see there is something very local. And at the same time, Catholic means...
You quote Barrès, Joseph de Maistre, they are still counter-revolutionaries, you know?
Yes, I quote, no, Barrès is not counter-revolutionary, he is even Republican. I also quote Chateaubriand, I also quote Marc Bloch. You see, I quote Benoît Méchain, I quote many people who are diverse, from diverse political origins, because I read very different people and I draw from everything. So...
Do you think you will be heard for this awakening?
I think so. There is, that's what I say at the end of the book, a whole youth that has understood well that is asking questions that their parents didn't ask them, and that there is a surge, there is a tremor. I'm not saying yet, obviously, that it's a wave. I'm saying it's a tremor. But this stirring is encouraging, and I think the younger generation is no longer at all in the cultural patterns of my generation.
The number of adult baptisms is indeed on the rise, but it does not compensate for the decline in child baptisms. Eric Zemmour, president of the Reconquête Party, the final word has not been said. Thank you. It is 8:48.